don't come across as rote, but I've been doing the best I can to give as much information as possible. And so I'm curious if y'all have a question that I haven't answered yet. That'll be fun. Get me thinking on my feet. But I could just sort of ramble for 40 minutes or so, or if y'all already know you got a couple questions I could start out the gate with, you're welcome to do that. I'll take the first hand. All right.
I was just wanted to ask about the security. How, since it's going to be bigger and we're going to invite more people in, some people who are not already members of the church, and for the children, like the play area, like how would that be with security and stuff?
Yeah, that's a great question. In fact, the security is what has led to a lot of this. I'll give you an example. When y'all remember back last summer when that guy was in the front row, started taking his clothes off?
Yeah.
We had to have him escorted out. And he started hollering about Obama. Remember that? Like in the middle of my sermon, second service. And our security team, they could tell they needed to keep an eye on him about from the moment he stepped on the property. Well, of all days, that was the day our consultant company was here. What had happened is my first meeting, I want to say, and by the way, you're recording this, right? You got it? Yeah. So I want to say it was my first meeting. Certainly, it was the first meeting with the Leadership Transition Committee. Bylaws require a Leadership Transition Committee that whenever the pastor's gone, before the next pastor arrives, there's a group of men and women that make decisions, kind of acting as the pastor, right? First meeting with them before they, step down off that role is we were up in the conference room outside my office, and they started handing me just packets of information of facility issues that needed to be addressed. And they were not wrong in what needed to be done. In fact, the search committee had already begun talking with me about some of the facility problems. It's just that no one knew the magnitude of the problem. We knew elevators got to be fixed. We knew HVAC systems had to be fixed. But nobody really knew how much all those things would start costing. So we started looking at different firms to come and work with us, different engineering firms, architecture firms. Well, the one that we ended up going with, which is another story if y'all want to know that, also serve as church consultants. So before they dive into a project, for example, one of the firms we called, we could just say, hey, we're looking for carpet and paint. And they'll say, no problem, here you go, right? But this firm said, well, we'd rather spend some time and get to know your campus because we don't want to assume something needs to be done that may not need to be done, so you waste money. So they came that day, and part of what they were here doing is they were not posing as architects and engineers. They were posing as husband and wife, stuff like that. And so what they do is they'll go into a church and they'll test security. Now, we don't have a clue who they are when they're showing up, right? But at one point, one of them tried to act like a husband who was going through a divorce, as if his kid was in the children's area, wondering could he get back in there and get his kid without the mom knowing. You know what I'm saying? Like if there's some kind of battle going on. So he was wondering, could I get back in there and see? And the answer was yes. He said, y'all got too many doors, you got too many hallways, you got too many entrances and exits. And well, then that day, when that was the same day that we had to throw that guy out of, you can't be in the middle of church taking your clothes off, right? And he got pretty close to whatever success he was aiming for, right? But security team was on it. But what happened that day is it made us start asking other questions. When I'm preaching, Amy sits to the right. She sits in both services. And she never misses a headline on the news when somebody shows up in church with a gun, and takes an aim at the pastor. She always sees those headlines. And, when you have a security incident in the worship center, man, I didn't even want to look at her because I knew she'd start crying if I looked at her. So I just kept focused. Plus, I know what Knucklehead was going to do. Is he going to turn and run? So I was keeping my eyes on him, and we tried to get the train back on the tracks after he was gone. So a lot of what this campaign or project that we're doing came from focusing on security as well as other things. Back in the 90s, when this facility was built, a lot of it, and most churches, the thing to do was to have lots of doors, because you wanted to be able to say, as if theologically, everybody come on in, you know. Well, it's a different world now than it was back then, security-wise, and a lot of crazy people, right? It's always been crazy people, but it just seems to have cranked up in the last 10 years, right? So we've got too many entrances and exits and things like that. Like we got a door right here. That's fine if you can't open it from the outside. We like exits. We need fewer entrances. That allows us to focus on who's coming in, and we can control that area. We have a great security team, but you know, if you got 500 doors to monitor, it makes it hard. So what we've done, part of you know, what's over here with the 2 additional entrances, is it kind of narrows down our entrances from whatever it is, 50 to like 3 key entrances. So it actually improves our security, not just to the overall building in particular, but it also improves our security specifically with the children's department, child care area, stuff like that. So we've changed and redone the floor plan of our children's ministry. We've rearranged where they're going to be. One of the things Dean Paul and I were talking about a moment ago is how so many of y'all that have kids, you know, you're going all over the place by the time you can make it back right here. And so we're trying to rearrange the ministries to keep everything together. That's better. That's better for parents. That's more for simplicity than it is for security. But we're also trying to increase the security. Now the way it is, where our children are in preschool and all that, there's just so many ways to come and go. We even hired another firm who specializes in like active shooter stuff, and he honestly spent, I don't know, half a day in our hallways, came back and he said, this is probably the worst you know, setup I've ever seen. So we knew these were new things that we needed to take serious. So security became a huge area. Now, as far as bringing new people in, that's always the case, right? I mean, we're always trying to reach people for Christ and all of that. But I wouldn't want us to think if we bring in new people to hear, you know, the scripture, that means we should now consider ourselves less safe. I mean, the task we have as Christians is to go into all the world and make disciples. And so I don't want to do one or the other, right? We want to go in the world, make more disciples, while also creating a much higher level of security. And we believe we've done that with this program, project, whatever you say. Does that make sense? I know I covered a whole bunch in that one question, but that was something that we spent a lot of time working on. Anybody want to follow up to that? Yeah.
She didn't really,
Oh, I can tell she got a lot going on, yeah. No child care.
She did ask about the playground in general, though. So what's...
Okay, so, yeah, what a good question about that has been, because it's a 2-story playground, and there's 2 floors, and so moms are going, hey, so if we're down here on floor 1, can our kids crawl up and go out on floor 2, and we have no idea where they went? So, no, we're making it to where, first of all, we're bringing in moms when we get to the design of that. So we're not doing like a one-size-fits-all playground. And 2, they will have access to, you know, climb all the 1st and 2nd floors, but that doesn't mean we're going to give them access to enter and exit from both floors. So that'll be something. Plus, one of the things that we've talked about is making that, you know, facility available during the week to families, trying to create a safe environment for moms and dads and kids.
I see Thursdays, we all need to bring our lunch after.
Yeah, right. But what we're also going to do is we're going to limit when the community at large can show up. So we'll have times where it's like free play Thursday at 4, whatever, you know, pick a day and time. That way, you know, we can still keep an eye on who's here and what's going on and stuff like that. So I want to be available to the community. I also want to keep security a high priority.
Are we looking into how that affects our insurance liability as well?
Yeah, but we have that now.
I know, but you're going to increase the amount of people in the
Yeah.
2-story playground is awful.
Are you thinking like as far as an injury potentially? Yeah. Well, the 2-story playground, it's enclosed, meaning like just like it is a Chick-fil-A. Like you can be at the top floor, but you can't fall to the bottom floor. So there's tunnels and all that kind of stuff.
That mom can go up and get their kid that won't come
Let's hope, right? Yeah, when they won't come down. Yeah. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So mine is a different question. Is that okay?
Sure.
All right.
So I wasn't here the day on Vision Sunday. As a family, I've been fighting cold that just keeps going around and
Yeah.
hitting us all hard. So this may have been answered. So my question was, over the past few weeks, we've had lessons that's geared towards offerings, tithing, that kind of stuff. So I wanted to see what our plans are in terms of achieving this goal, in terms of the money, where it's coming from. Are we taking out a loan as a church? Are we basically trying to, by doing this drive, kind of raise that fund?
Yeah.
Then the second part that's unrelated is to see if there is within this plan any thoughts about extending the school hours that
The preschool? Okay.
during the week.
All good questions. For how we're gonna pay for all this, right? A couple things to notice. One, the total cost of all that's on there, and even more, is a lot more pictures than what we fit on the poster board. Right at $10 million, just under 10 million. Our campaign goal was not 10 million. Now, it was and it wasn't. First of all, we do have the hope, and our prayers have been focused, that the entire amount and more will be provided through this campaign. We'd love to see more than 10 million come in. Now, can that happen? Well, sure. Is it probable? No, right? I mean, just basing history and what's typical of churches our size, with our size budget, you know, a $3.5 million campaign would be a very good campaign. To be at 3.5 million committed over the course of 3 years, that'd be a success. Problem is, we need 10. So the next question comes in: what happens if we don't bring in 10? Well, what we're proposing are needs, and not sure would be nice if we had, right? So, are we prepared to borrow? Maybe. That's the best answer. So, trustees and I have been working on this for a long time, trying to figure it out. I mean, they were involved in the beginning conversation even a year ago with the needs that were there. And the truth is, a year and a half ago, the plan then, before I got here, was to borrow enough money to fix all that needed to be fixed. The issue was the amount that they thought needed to be borrowed wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough. And so what I didn't want to do, number one, is start out where the church has been in decline in attendance and offerings for 12, 13 years in a row, and then all of a sudden go out and borrow money. It didn't seem smart, and it was too much of a risk. Plus, we didn't know for sure what all the problems were. We needed to bring in engineers and specialists and experts so they could tell us the level or the depth of the problems. And then I just wanted to spend time seeing, could we raise it before borrowing it? So even now, it's been something that we've prayed as a staff and me individually every day for months now. I mean, literally every day, that God would provide. But I think God, and I mean, I'm not going to presume upon God, I think He is going to have to raise up folks even from outside our congregation to make that happen. Just like He did when the Israelites left Egypt. You know, those who were not part of Israel contributed towards it. And we've had folks that have stepped up who are not part of this congregation saying they want to help, believe it or not. Now, when I say, would we borrow? Maybe. It's going to depend on a number of factors. The thing I've done to this point is I've not begun any paperwork. Now, here's the truth. Our church is so much stronger now than it was a year and a half ago. Our numbers are up, our offerings are up, our total cash on hand is up. The general trajectory of every single category is increase. And so it makes us healthy again. So banks and lenders have heard what we're up to because they're smart, and they've contacted us and said, we can give you the best loan scenarios, we can beat everybody else. Let us go ahead and begin the paperwork. And I've said no every time. And they've said, no, we're not saying that you are committed to this. We just want you to go ahead and sign the document so we can begin the process, so we can just present scenarios. And I've said no. And they've said, no, you don't understand. This is how multi-million-dollar deals are done. We know that you don't want to borrow yet, but you're going to wait and see. But let us still just show you how good of a deal we can give you. And I've said no. They even did a last-ditch effort, well, next to last-ditch, when they said the rates are going up. Everyone knows that. And so let us lock it in now while it's still low. And I've said no. And so 2 bankers did a last-ditch effort 2 weeks ago and just showed up here to meet with me. And so I smiled, and they said, "You want to meet with them?" And I said, "Come on." So they brought them in, and they were super kind and nice and all of that. And they were trying to explain. They thought I just didn't understand banking and numbers and whatnot. And I said, no, I understand all that very well. What I think you're misunderstanding me to say is not that I don't understand numbers, but I said, I'm understanding you all to not be Christians, and that's not an insult. It's just that I'm choosing to have faith that God will provide, and I don't want to come up with a plan B for God yet. And so I felt like if I'd have done that, my conscience was hitting me. And I felt like if I'd have done that, I'd have been saying, God, provide, and we believe you can provide, but we're going to have plan B over here just in case you don't. And it didn't feel like faith in my mind. And they were telling me how crazy I was, and they were getting other pastors to call me. How funny was that? Like, look, I love you, man, but that has nothing to do with it. So they had people that they thought, Brian will listen to this one, but that just wasn't it. And, you know, it's kind of like, you remember when, and I even used this illustration with the 2 bankers that were sitting on my desk. It was 2 women sitting on in my office across from my desk, and they said, you know, it locks in lower rates. And I said, look, there's a book in the Bible called Daniel. Daniel had 3 friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And I said, there's a time when, because of their faith, the king, who was evil, threw them in the fire for the faith. And they said to the king, our God is able to keep us from this. But even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow our knee. And I said, that's what I'm trying to say to y'all here. Our God is able to provide the 10 million or more that we need. Even if he doesn't, he's still God. And then we'll come up with what at that point, and then we'll just seek and discern and all that. I am willing to borrow, but I'm not willing to destroy the church in the process. And here's why I'm willing to borrow. 1, I hate debt. Hate it. I won't even loan my kids $1. We've been at the store before, and they're like $1 short of something. And they say, Daddy, can I borrow $1? I say, no. I give it to them, but I'm not going to loan it to them. I don't want them to get used to borrowing, even at that age. The reason we're at this point now is we have such an issue to deal with that we're no longer debating between what's best case scenario. Best case scenario is these things were handled 10, 15 years ago. That's best case scenario. Problem was it wasn't, and there's lots of reasons why it wasn't. Nobody was negligent, nothing like that. But now the things that should have been done 15 years ago or 20 years ago are 15, 20 years older. And so if we don't at least allow ourselves to say, hey, it makes good business sense to fix this, then what's going to happen is what happens to a lot of churches that say, we won't go into debt for any reason whatsoever. And we all understand the Bible does not speak favorably towards debt. It refers to it as slavery, but it doesn't refer to it as sin. And so if it was sin, pretty much everybody in the planet would be in sin because we have a mortgage, we have a car, we have all these other things that we use with debt. Sometimes there's just no option. In fact, sometimes even it was a good idea to go into debt, and it has been. Now, I hate saying that, but let me give an example. If this whole place was about to collapse internally, and the fire marshal shows up and says, you cannot worship here anymore until you fix that such and such, and there's lots of such and suches that need to be fixed, then what are we going to do? Oh well. Or do we say, let's get the loan, let's fix it, right? So we want to make sure that's still an if, right? We want to make sure if we borrow, that we borrow the smallest amount that we need at the best rates possible and pay it off as quickly as possible. So we're not looking to borrow and do a 30-year mortgage. If we borrowed, that's still an if, but I don't want to. If we borrowed, we're looking to figure out any other way we can, even if that means another campaign on the heels of this one to pay off that debt in another 3 years, something like that. The current debt we have is $1,417,000. We're paying a 3.89% rate. It's set to mature in May of 2023. That's 6 years from now, a little over 6 years from now. What we're proposing is to set up the same kind of structure that would have us out of debt at the same time frame, if not sooner. So it wouldn't lengthen our time in debt. Again, even talking about this makes me nervous because I don't want to borrow anything. But that gives you an idea. So somebody had asked, what are the terms? We don't have any terms yet. We're trying to see what God's going to do first. So, and a lot of that starts today. A lot of families have already committed. We've got an amount that I'm going to share with the church here in a little while of what's already been committed and already begun to come in. And then we're going to keep at it for a while because I have folks in the community that have asked to meet with me who want to help with what we're doing. So I can already see God working, you know. So long answer again, but I want to give you where we are on that, so.
Hey, Brian, you
Yes,
said
sir.
10 million, so that came down from 14.
Did, at one point it was 15, now it's 10. That's just a testament to the group we're working with, Costco. They're a Christian group. We had 4 firms we brought here to kind of bid on the work. One said the problem's so big we're not even going to bid on it. Another one said the problem's big, we could bid on it, but we feel bad because y'all are a church and it's going to cost so much to fix it. And then the other 2 firms, so they kind of bowed out. The other 2 firms, one was Costco and there's another one. It's just Costco showed us their system and policies, and it seemed like a much greater deal. For example, when Costco started working with us, first of all, it's a Christian company, Christian-owned, Christian employees. When the owner meets with the employees or prospective employees, he says to them, we are a Christian company. Not telling you have to be Christian, but we are a Christian company, and here's what that means. You're not going to get rich here. And so he'll tell them, you're a brilliant architect or whatever you are, but we believe God has put this organization here to help churches be the best stewards they can. So on his own, he keeps finding ways to save money. And what's funny about that is they're paid based on percentage. So it's in their best interest financially that he finds ways to increase the cost because he's going to get a percentage as his fee, the firm overseeing the construction. But they keep shaving off little by little all the time. So it's come down from 15 at one point, now it's down to like 9.9, right at 10. Hi.
When you answered his question that you were at 15 and then you were down to 10, is there a possibility that once they start getting the work done, it can go back up to them?
Okay, so the possibility is once they give us the final quote, it won't go up. That's one of the other things about this organization. And that's a lot for this church to hear, because apparently in years past, when they fix stuff, they'd be told it's going to cost 30 grand, end up being 150 stuff. So one of the things that this group does is they guarantee their amount. And some of the reasons it's come down is because they sought out multiple options. HVAC was a good example. We didn't just say fix what we've got. We looked into, do we have what's the right thing to have? Is there a better option? Or is there more than one way to do this? You know, because like if you call in the company that sells the stuff, they're going to say, oh yeah, you need the Cadillac, and it's $100 million, but it's what you need. So we sort of put all the groups against each other, even in that pre-bidding process. And then we brought in some of the engineers that this group has used in the past, and we just flat out asked them questions like, you're telling us we need these 3 units. Do we need 3 or could we get by on 2? And we just started asking all kinds of questions like that. And that's what really brought down the cost. And one thing, at one point, the HVAC alone was going to be over $5 million, $5.5, $6 million, just for HVAC. Now think about that. That's a ton of money. But you think about it at your house. I mean, if you've got a 2,000 square foot house, your HVAC's probably $3 grand, right? That's 2,000 square feet. We have over 250,000 square feet. So you do the math, it's expensive to heat and cool this place. The other thing that we're doing, on that note, you didn't ask this, but it's interesting, is we're looking at energy saving. So that way, once we put in the new units, our monthly cost is going to go down a ton, and our maintenance is going to go down a ton. So right now, we've got a maintenance man here. Think of how many times a year you have a maintenance man working on your HVAC at your house. If it's once a year, that's kind of a lot. He's here 4 days a week. Wrap your mind around that for a minute. 4 days a week. There were times I didn't know he didn't work here. I thought, oh, Jason is a good employee. His name's Jason. We need to give him a raise. And people were like, no, he's the HVAC guy. I'm like, I know. I thought he was like our HVAC guy. No, I mean, he works for that company. Wow. So we're trying to get to a quarterly maintenance. So that's going to go down to 4 times a year versus 4 times a week. So there's tremendous savings, a lot up front, you know how that goes, but then savings over the long haul they're going to be. And plus, the systems we've had in this church since it's ever first built was our 5 to 7 year systems. We're looking at a 25 to 30 year system. So we're not kicking the can down the road. You know, we're launching it to another couple of decades. So.
Preschool?
Great question, yes. That's actually a passion of mine. And what we have now is like a part-time, half-time preschool, right? Like a few days a week for a couple hours. And I think we've got the potential to blow it out with a full-time, 5-day-a-week preschool, especially when you know that the Atlanta City Bus is dropping off and picking up families and going into the city of Atlanta. And you know most of them have families. They'd love to have the kind of one-stop shop So what I've done over the last several months, and even a couple people in here I've asked to help me with it, is I've reached out to some organizations that serve as consultants just to do just that, to bring in, to transform or transition your half-time, part-time preschool to a more full-time preschool. So that is a goal that I have, and I think it is I think it'd be a very wise thing to do. There'll be some upfront cost, but we're trying to put a lot of that, if not all of that, into this program. In fact, you'll notice on one of these over here, it's not on here, but it has the preschool area. Right now, we have our through the week preschool uses one floor, our Sunday morning preschool uses another. So we're combining that so that we have this much updated and up to code preschool facility, so that as prospective parents come in and check it out, we've got everything up to date and up to code and beyond. And a lot of what we're working gets us closer to that. So we'll have to come back later and do something again. That is a big goal.
So you're just focusing on preschool at this point, not anything extending into more grades?
No, believe it or not, this project covers every age group. And in fact, senior adults, we have second and third floor. I think today you'll see some things around that have first floor on it. But under the worship center, this parking lot, here's that new, whatever that restaurant is. Y'all say it used to be the Huddle House. I don't know, it's like a Caribbean thing now, right? So that's what this parking lot is, right? So what we're doing is underneath all of this area here, that's ground floor, where you can just go in at ground floor, just kind of go up a curb, and that's it, is we're redoing the whole thing for senior adults and special needs. But also, really every other ministry is being impacted. I mean, our students ministry is being updated and upgraded. In fact, our student ministry, or children rather, will be brought to what is currently the choir suite across the hall here. They're going to have a whole children's church thing dedicated to that age group. The FCC is going to be college, young professionals, young adults. That's going to be FCC, because Awanas will move into that area. Students up on the third floor, they're having a couple things added to them. We're going to be trying to update their bathrooms because they look like 1960 in there. And then the choir and music area is being rearranged right over here. We're expanding all the entrances and hallways. That helps all the families. And then also, we're knocking out a lot of our itty-bitty, teeny-tiny bathrooms, and we're putting full-size bathrooms in. That'll help everybody. And then over here, this huge lobby that we're adding is one of those centralized entry points for increased security. We're adding what's called a monumental stair. It's a lot more gradual, so that even if senior adults come in there, or folks with any kind of a need of assistance for walking, it's an easier set of stairs than that corkscrew people stopper that we have now. So that'll help. So senior adult special needs. In fact, we're adding special needs children area under the worship center as well. Right now, we have a great thing going for special needs adults, but nothing for special needs children, and so that's going to be an emphasis. So truly, every age group and demographics being impacted by this project. So I'm glad you asked that. I get excited about that one. It's going to be fun.
Was your question about if they're doing like a private school? Is that what you're asking about school age? It was going to do the week for private school?
Well, kind of that, but if there was going to be an extension into higher grades.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not looking to add kindergarten or anything.
For
Yeah.
Christian schools around the area.
Yeah. I don't see at this point zero desire to add like kindergarten and elementary through like that kind of school. That's a whole other animal. The church I pastored for 5 years in Charlotte, we had a Christian school K through 12, preschool all the way to. If you do that, it completely changes the church. It changes the way it's led, organized, funded. Well, consider this room right now. We can come in here and do whatever we want during the week. Well, not when there's a school here. So even the leadership model changes, the cost of maintenance changes. You get kids just using stuff, the maintenance cost goes up a ton. Having a school is extremely expensive. In fact, it ends up taking over the expenses of the church because you have upfront costs, whether you have 5 kids or 7 kids. So it would be an extremely expensive endeavor. So I wouldn't be opposed to having a school. I just would have to really have my arm twisted and somebody dump a whole bunch of money.
I can volunteer for the arm twisting.
Yeah. I mean, my wife would love to put our kids in it. I mean, it changes everything about the model of the church.
It just seems like such a great way to kind of get that into our kids. So many of them are growing up
Oh,
up
yeah.
without that knowledge
Yeah.
of God.
I know. Anybody else? Yes.
It's once all this construction and repairs start, is it gonna affect the flow of things, you know, how we come in, take the kids?
You mean like during construction?
Yes.
Yes, and that's where the phases come in down here. So this is phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. It's kind of sequencing, you know? The whole thing from start to finish is gonna be less than 3 years once we, you know, swing the first hammer. But that's how we sequenced it. That's why we sequenced it the way, so that ministry can still happen. So there'll be a time, for example, when we're having our church service Sunday morning in the dining room. That'll last for between 9 and 12 months.
Will the daycare, I guess the children care and nurture,
When we transition them, but there won't be a time that we're shutting down preschool or whatever. It's just they'll be meeting in a different room while we fix that one. You know what I mean? There's a lot of that that'll happen.
okay, good.
Yeah. But not you, yeah, we'll take care of them. Do you have a question? Go ahead.
When you're working on when you're working on the worship center, what is the worship center?
Couldn't hear what you said.
When you're working on the worship center, where will we listen to you preach?
Oh, it'll be in the dining room. That's what the plan is. Well, you know, there's already a stage in there, and we've been updating some of the, you know, audio video stuff already, kind of budgeting that in. And so I'll be able to preach there. We'll have choir, the whole thing, just like normal. It'll just happen, you know, the big dining room right above us here. I guess it's right there. Oh, you were pointing? Yeah. Just kind of get your bearings. So, yeah.
No, I said right above us.
Is it right above? I guess it is.
Kids above us in the dining room.
Yeah. So there, that's where it'll be. Yes.
So we're blessed to have a pretty good sized class. I have a two-part question. I want to ask first, kind of, what do you think the ideal size class is? And the second part would be, much of the construction is aimed to reach really our age group, 20s to 50s, kids and families in here. From a volunteer standpoint, what are the plans and goals to really enact the church? Because a great percentage really of our class is serving, and that's going to be needed. We see that in ministries, I'm sure you do, from the rest of the church to carry it through and to be serving through the growth.
You know, when I was at 3 churches ago, I was over one department, but the church was so large that I was over, I want to say 30 or 35 Sunday school classes just for that one age group. I no longer have an ideal number of a size of a class. I used to, but it was arbitrary because I've seen classes of 5 or 6 that were incredible, and I've seen classes of 100 that were incredible, and I've seen everything in between that were both incredible and terrible, you know. And so I look at it the way I do churches. You know, I have good friends that pastor a church of, you know, 50, 40, and I have good friends that pastor a church of 7,000, 8,000 on Sunday morning. And the only thing I dislike, and we have these conversations all the time, right? Because the smaller size church will say the bigger ones are too big. And sometimes the bigger churches, we've even heard recently, a celebrity pastor even said smaller churches are not good because they can't provide what families need for their kids. Where I step in is when either side tries to throw stones at the other. I can't stand it, you know? And so I don't really have a key, this is the perfect size mind, you know, in mind. What I'll say here when I'm praying about the size of our church is I'll pray that God will help us grow to the level we can effectively minister to those who come. And so that's the way I've been praying that prayer 1,000 times. I mean, thousands of times. Not just since I was here, but even in previous churches. God, help us grow to the level we can effectively minister to those who arrive. And so that way God's in charge of it. And, you know, I'm very cautious about any kind of church growth, because where Jesus says, I will build my church, I don't want to be in competition with Jesus. So I'll let him build it. I'll just shepherd and pastor it, right? Now, you guys have a unique situation because it's all families for the most part, right? And kids and all that. There's never a time I can think of that we're going to have enough people helping, you know? And as a staff upstairs, I mean, that's one of the key areas we're working on. For 2016, last year, I came up with a key word for the year, and it was the word stability, only because the church had had no stability for like 15 years. I mean, in every way. So we said for 2016, the word for the year is stability. Well, for 2017, it's invest. And so we're doing so much to invest in our campus, in our facilities, but also in our leaders and our teachers. We're investing in our families. We're trying to invest not just money, in these examples, but also with like the mentoring groups that we're doing for the men's ministry. We knew that was a fast and very direct, even aggressive way to quickly invest in our husbands and dads and, things like sons, things like that. So, and one of the ways we're hoping to see a result of that investment with these small group mentoring groups is seeing more men get involved, leading. You'll hear me talking about it more, So I don't know if that answers exactly your question, but that kind of gives you an idea of just sort of my philosophy of it. I know that whatever we promote, we'll get, whatever gets the attention, we'll get the results. So I'd love to see a percentage goal, serving, right? I mean, what if we said, make a goal where 40% of every Sunday school class was serving, and then we hit it and we go, okay, now let's make it 60%, and keep raising it up to where everybody's, well, we use a phrase upstairs called the fully engaged member. Fully engaged means they're serving, they're learning, so there's discipleship, they're serving, they're giving, and they're leading. Because sometimes you might serve in an area you're not leading in, right? So we want to see those sort of checkpoints for everybody here. So fully engaged would include serving. And we even say serving in an area where someone's waiting on you, right? Versus like walking in the room going, yeah, I'm willing to help. If there's something you just let me know, But we want to see people engaged in a service area where if you're not there, something didn't get done because it was needed and necessary and involved and strategic and all that. So, yeah. Yes, sir.
What would children be able to do to help besides give offering?
What an awesome question. Let's just get a video of that right there. One of the ways that you can help is, in Scripture, how Jesus so obviously loves children and talks about how if we come to him with the faith of a child, you almost get the impression Jesus likes children better than grown-ups, and who can blame him, right? I think one way you could help is if you make it a matter of prayer. I think God particularly attunes his ear to the prayers of a child, So if you would pray for this campaign to be a success, that God will provide abundantly more, that would be wonderful. And I mean, that right there, man, if you did that and got your friends around you to do the same thing, that would be awesome. And you watch what will happen. You start leading in that area, God will develop you into a leader for the rest of your life, Good question.
It's 10:20, I want to make sure we don't miss a chance.
Oh, is that clock behind?
Yeah.
It is, yeah. But I'm good if you are. I mean, if you need the last question, I mean, this is your opportunity.
I have a question.
Oh, now they come up. All right.
No, I mean, today is commitment service, right?
Correct.
So I just want to have an idea of what to expect.
It'll be very similar to a normal service. There'll be, I think, one less song, and they're trying to get me to preach a shorter sermon. I don't know if that's going to happen or not. But after the message, there will be some music, and there's a video. I'm trying to remember when the video plays. There's a video that our team has put together. I just saw it for the first time yesterday. It was really neat. Then we will have ushers. There'll be an offering, just like normal for our tithes and regular offerings. But then there'll be a second collection where ushers, and I'll get up and say this. It won't be a surprise. I'll get up and say, here's what we're going to do. Now's the time. And the ushers have little bundles of those commitment cards, rubber banded together. They'll put a bundle at each pew, and then everybody will have a chance to fill it out. And then they'll come back and collect them all up, and then they're going to dump those commitment cards in these boxes that are going to be up on either side of the pulpit. And then we'll have a time of prayer over it and celebration, and we're going to be singing again. And I'll do an invitation after that. So very similar to a normal service.
So the commitment is kind of like saying, I'm committing myself to do this for the project?
That's right. Yeah, you're going to be putting what your commitment would be giving over and above the tithe for the next 3 years. And we've told people over and over, and we've even put it in fine print on the bottom of the commitment card. This is not locking it in. Folks have an issue with like the Ananias and Sapphira vision, right? Massively different than what Ananias and Sapphira lied about what they were giving as they gave it, right? So they were putting money in the pot saying this is everything that we had to live on. They were lying. When you say, here's my goal, here's my goal that I'm trying to commit to, we as a church fully understand life can happen in a year from now that you didn't foresee. That's why at the bottom it says you can change it over time. In fact, we're going to have a time halfway through where we're going to ask everybody, if you need to change your commitment, now's your time to do it. So we don't want anybody to kind of run themselves into the poorhouse because they committed and found out they couldn't give, something came up later, So this is just everyone putting a commitment, a goal. Think of it that way, And when folks have said, oh, man, I'm scared to get, well, don't be, because we're not going to take you to court over it, But you get the idea, right? So it's our goal. It's our commitment. My wife and I are doing the same thing. So I saw another hand. Sorry.
So my question is, it's slightly weird, but
We'll give it a shot. All right.
yeah. So as a person who's been in this church for not too long, I've seen some transitions, and First Baptist is known for transitions.
Mm-hmm.
The example that I give is 124. You
Yes.
drive down 124.
Oh, yeah.
5 years ago, parts of 124 didn't look like it did now, and there's a lot of excitement that you feel about the new stores and all that. We don't have that excitement here about the new building. Not equally. Like people are excited about Cracker Barrel, but not.
Oh, yeah.
Not here. The question I'm asking is for people like me. I've been on the fence. I'm off the fence now about this. For people like me who were on the fence at some point, one of the things in my mind was, this is just a new pastor. Every new pastor comes with something big that they want to do, right?
Sure, usually.
The
Yeah.
last time it was changing the whole choir area, right?
When was that?
That was probably 4
Okay.
years ago. So the whole choir walk area where we sing
Mhm.
got transformed. We met in the place,
Oh, yeah.
in the dining hall for a while, also while that was being done. What would you say, and again, I'm not on the fence anymore.
Right.
But what would you say to people who either are on the fence or are not even thinking about the fence because this is a new pastor, every new pastor comes with new stuff, here we
Yeah.
go again. What would you say to them to get that Cracker Barrel excitement about?
Yeah. A couple things I would say. If they don't want to give, don't give. It's an instantaneous answer I'd give to somebody. And I've had one person who was a visitor. He said, I don't want to give a penny to it. I said, then I hope you don't. Because God loves a cheerful giver, first of all, right? And two, I don't need their money, right? So if the last thing I ever want to be understood is that some of the staff came to me and said, what if the church, a year and a half ago, what if the church rejects this? I said, we won't do it. But here's the other side of that. When I was interviewed for this role, the needs were quickly put out there. Pastor, we got an aging facility. Some parts are older than others. We've got HVAC and elevators, and I mean the list went on and on and on and on. I mean it was page after page after page after page of issues. We own golf carts that haven't worked in years, stuff like that. We just got all kinds of stuff. And they said we need someone who can get us through that needed time of fixing, improving, enhancing, etc. And so I knew coming into it this was the need. And I'll tell you this, not a single bit of that was my idea. That's another thing to know. When we brought in Costco, honest to goodness, what we wanted to know is what does it really cost to fix the HVAC? And I can assure you, I did not sit at home having dreams of updating a church's HVAC facility, But once we got in and started seeing the problems presented themselves. So my vision was, let's get past all these massive needs so that we can get back to focusing on ministry. So we can get back to focusing on families and things like that. Now, if I had the money to write the check myself, I'd do it. But you know, this is how we do it, right? The other thing is, there were families before us, 50 years ago, that sacrificed incredibly to get the church to this point. And so now it's our turn to sacrifice to get the church to the next 50 years. And so if someone says, like you say, someone who's not on the fence, they're not even interested, okay. I mean, you know, I don't spend a lot of time worrying about people who are booing from the bleachers, right? I want to know who's on the field on the team with me. And so if someone's, you know, it's always the people who can't play, who are in the field, on the bleachers hollering, right? And they get on your nerves because you're like, hey, either help or hush, right? So for me, I mean, I've been used to that. And now, it is true. Sometimes you get a pastor who shows up, and the next thing you know, man, here's this grand vision of like escalators and chandeliers. And it's like, oh, yeah, that's going to help us. But none of that is what we're presenting. You know, what we're presenting over here is increased security for all of our families, ease of access for senior adults and special needs, fixing all of our infrastructure that's an issue. I mean, the church would have a heart attack and die if I didn't get rid of the purple carpet. That's like a thing here, right? So we got to get rid of the purple carpet, or they'll find somebody who will, probably, right? So, but the purple carpet thing is like the cheapest. I mean, that's nothing. You just roll out a bunch of carpet and it's hardly anything. In fact, our maintenance team could probably do the purple carpet and paint on the walls. What we're presenting gets us to the next 50 years, really. So that's how I would respond to it. I wouldn't spend time begging. I wouldn't spend even half a second begging and pleading. I just present the need, present the solution, and then give people an opportunity to say, I want to be a part of it, you know. So, in every campaign, I've been in other campaigns, there's always somebody that thinks they have the spiritual gift of negativity, you know. And what they'll always say is, well, so-and-so is an optimist, and they'll say, but I'm a realist. Isn't that what they say? All pessimists call themselves realists. They're just really pessimistic, you know. And what ends up happening when you get to the other end of a campaign is some of the ones who are the biggest naysayers become some of the loudest supporters and champions of it when they see what was done and they go, you know what, this was a good thing that we did this, you know. So that's some of my long-winded answer to that.
One quick question, I know you have to go. Is there any other ideas to come up with the amount of need, like as far as getting the community involved, like maybe like a community garage sale and other procedures?
Yeah, a lot of folks have been bringing those ideas to us, you know. Yeah.
We can volunteer and help out instead of hiring an outside source and then the money
Yeah.
will go towards.
That'd be wonderful, you know. Now, we've not sat down and planned like a church flea market or nothing like that, but, I mean, we're open to whatever we could to get the job done, if we can. Did I see a hand back there? Over here?
Yes. I just want to add my own few stuff to it. Like a song in my country, it goes like that. I've never seen you before, but I've seen all your works. They were singing about Jesus.
Yeah.
And this is an opportunity. You preached about 2 weeks ago that you said, you know, when they were coming from the wilderness with nothing. And when they started putting stuff down, when they want to build it, you get to a point that they say, stop it. So we've had enough. I'm glad to be in this, at this moment. I'm here that we are doing this. I'm really happy that I'm participating in the work of God.
Amen.
And this is the faith, we're going to do it. It's happening.
There you go.
And we're going to get there, I believe.
I like that.
Amen.
I got one last statement.
All right.
You've done a lot of Q&As, partly because people want to know what's going on, but also partly because people hear the numbers. Oh my goodness, that's a ton of money. I don't explain why. I still can't wrap my head around that 100% of church members don't tithe.
Oh, yeah.
And if we tied, if everybody tied, you wouldn't have to do so many Q&As, because people be so much more.
Yeah, we'd have money to burn.
So much money,
Yeah.
you know?
That's just the way it is, yeah.
So,
Yeah, well, I mean, the 20% thing, it's a principle. It's
even
called,
if it's 60, that's not 100.
yeah,
That's
it's called,
100.
well, okay, so if you start breaking down some of those numbers, first of all, a 20% giving church, it's not always a terrible thing. Let me give you an example. You know, some of these churches that are focusing on students and kids, well, they might have a 60% ratio of students that don't even have a job, right? So in some cases, it's pretty good. It can be a good number. The point still remains, there are a lot of folks that just don't give a
Yeah, I mean,
penny.
100% of adults, I don't mean.
Yeah.
Teenagers.
So, but it does put us right there with man, probably every church, you know, in the country. It's a shame, right? And you hate it. But when folks come to me and say, I can't give anything, I'll say, okay, you know, and sometimes I'll push back and say, you can't give anything? I mean, God gives you $1, you can't give a dime, you know? Some folks will say, well, I'm up to here in debt. I go, okay, well, you've destroyed your finances through poor stewardship. Let's talk about how maybe you can be a better steward on how the Bible teaches to manage your finances, you know? And that's why we offer, what do you call it, Dave Ramsey classes here and stuff like that. Because, I mean, so many people, if you've had a job for more than 5 years, you've learned how to mess up your finances, right? I mean, everybody in the country, it's too easy of an opportunity to mess up finances. But we try to provide ways here at the church by teaching on it every week about the importance of. I really believe, you know, there's a statement, it's like, if you learn to tithe when you, are making $10 a week, it'll be a lot easier to tithe when you make $1 million a year. But you often hear stories about people that say, man, you know, I make a whole lot of money, but I'm not going to give that much to the church. And so what I'll do with folks like that is say, well, let's just pray that God will reduce your salary so that what you're able to tithe matches your income. And that way you won't be feeling this guilt that you're feeling right now. Last thing I want is for you to not receive God's blessings because you you refuse to give to the Lord. So, and there was a guy I met at a graveside a couple of days ago. I went to a funeral, graveside. This guy came over to me, extremely wealthy man. And he started sharing all these, he started sharing all these stories of how he and his wife have given over the years, over and above 10%. And this guy he could finance this whole campaign if he wanted to, not even miss it. And he said that he learned years ago, this guy was probably in his 70s, he said, I learned a long time ago, every time I try to outgive God, he always gives it back. He said, you just can't outgive God. So when it comes to our offerings, you know, and we're going to see a little bit of that in the message today if I ever get to it, but it is the case. And so I don't try to argue with people, you know, when they say I refuse to give. Okay. I mean, you're refusing a lot of ways God blesses, right? I bet you agree. I mean, if people don't give, they're missing out on the way God blesses. And one of the ways God blesses. So
we're going to send the pastor off. Here's the great thing about how prayer works. We can send him and pray for him, and it still gets connected. Isn't that awesome? But Pastor, thanks. I want to point out, you realize that he and Amy are actually, they're part of our class. So when we get together on our Sunday afternoons, they're there not showing up as pastor and pastor's wife, but as Brian and Amy with kids. So love on them. They're real people. Yeah. You know? He didn't lose the anointing because I touched him. There's some of that in the city of Atlanta.
Yeah.
Just give him a pat on the back every now and then, a hug. He will accept it greatly.
Yeah, all the time. I'll beat you to it too.
Let me pray for you quickly and let you go. And then we'll take some time and we'll break into groups here as we've done before. And let's just pray about this day. Pray about the pastor. Pray about people that are wrestling, even on a commitment Sunday. And we'll see what God's going to do. All right? Father, we love you and we bless you. And we're excited for what you have in store. And so we're going to trust you with each and every step of the process. And we're grateful for the man that you've sent to us and his family. And we pray for him. We lift him up right now so that he would be your voice piece, that you would give him clear thoughts, clear words, that you would guard him, that you would use him in a mighty powerful way. And at the end of this day, when he's exhausted, that you would even be there to be his strength, his portion, his shield, his buckler, his strong tower. Every prayer that the psalmist would pray, that the apostles would pray, Lord, we lift those up to you specifically for him this day. For every member of staff, we're excited for what you're going to do, and we wait upon you now. We ask and pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Hey, y'all, if you come up with anything else you'd love a question on, just give me a holler, email, phone call, whatever. I'm very accessible. All right? Thanks for letting me hang out with you.
Thanks, Pastor.